Hey, today I'm going to tackle the heater core replacement in a 67 to 68 Mustang or Cougar with air conditioning. And this is, I think, the hardest of them all because unlike the 6970 or the 71 through 3, the lower dash does not remove. I'm still going to convince you, even though this is a hard job, to try it yourself. Reason being, shops are notorious for just tearing this up. If the shop says, oh yeah, I've done a few of those, that would be a good way to go maybe. Or if they say, well, I would absolutely watch the video that you're providing, that's a good clue. So the items you're going to need before you even get started are a brass heater core, very important. Most of them are aluminum today. I know they're a fraction of the price, but these last so much longer. We tried the economy Chinese aluminum ones and they were just junk. And you don't want to do this job again in the next 20 or 30 years. A seal kit, this will seal the entire plenum, and of course some 3M adhesive to bond all these seals to the box. You might get in there and find somebody's been there before and annihilated it, or you might find the heater core has been leaking so long that the fiberglass has expanded and got soft and warped and the metal's all rusted. In that case, you're just going to want to put a new setup in. You'll still need these items though. Some optional things you might look at buying, and you can do these after the job. This little guy here, oftentimes these nipples are, you'll go to take the hose off and they're so brittle they break off. And then sometimes when you do the little test there, you'll notice they aren't working at all. So that little AC valve, vacuum valve, something you might want to look at. We have the correct hoses. They work so much better when they have this molded jog in there. The red stripes are just pretty. And of course we have the hot water shutoff valve with the right bracket. Easy to test. You can actually feel the spring tension. There shouldn't be any vacuum leak when you do that. Again, these three items can be bought after you've done the job and decide you need them. But these you want to get before you even get going. So I'm going to just start on this car and we're just going to work peripherally towards that heater box. We're going to undo fasteners and just work our way in. Of course, your first idea is to take apart as little as possible. I'm going to tell you right up front, take out your console and your bucket seat. I know it's a hassle, but you're going to need that room. So the first thing I'm going to do is pull out that bucket seat with my 1/2 inch deep socket. And of course, to pull those rubber plugs, you're going to need a screwdriver. Well, this is a why you're at it. I wasn't anticipating. This is all super glued here, and the super glue is dried up. Anyway, the correct way to do these is patch them from back and reinforce them. I don't know if this one's worth it or not. Yeah, we got screws broken out in 2 places. This one's just probably too far gone, busted out in that area. On the back of the radio is a mounting stud, and if yours is properly mounted with these brackets in place, you'll need to reach back there with your 7/16 socket and take that nut off the stud. You're just going to have to feel for it, but it is in the center, so it shouldn't be too hard. I've already got it loosed. There we go. There's my antenna that just unplugged. Okay, this is a rust-free car, so I'm not going to worry about soaking anything, but on cars that have had some moisture in here, you'll break these off if you don't soak them and clean the threads first. This is a 5/16 fine thread, and they're a booger to drill out once you break them off, so make sure you don't give them too much stress. Now, one thing I haven't mentioned is I've already evacuated this from the refrigerant. I'm not going to go over that with you because you probably don't have the machine, but it's easy to take it to a shop and say, can you please evacuate my system, store the refrigerant? I'll be back in a week or a day or whatever. So it shouldn't be a big charge there. And of course, there might be other things you want done at the same time at that shop. So here we go. Okay, these are somewhat delicate fittings onto your AC evaporator, so it's very important that you keep this wrench stationary and don't let it wander around when you're giving this wrench force. Now, these have recently been off, so it's going to be no big deal, but on an older system, you might have issues. You'll have some residual pressure. The air compressor's still running and creating pressure, but this is not refrigerant. Just a few psi of air. There it goes. Okay, so we're going to get this probe removed from the line. It's a temperature sensing probe. It's one of those where we gotta feel our way into it because we can't see. And we don't want to lose the fastener on the other side here. This, if you're on a rack, might be easier to access from the bottom. Okay, here comes the fastener. Now we're going to peel this plate back. Now the probe is free to come off. Get our big ugly wrenches back in there. Again, this hand has to really stay solid. You don't want to give it too much stress this way or the other. This is the one you're reefing on right here. Here comes the rubber seal. Okay, now I'm going to start working on the peripherals of this box and just get everything out of the way. So even this little stuff, I mean, it's just going to be in the way, so let's go ahead and get it out. Let's take that out. And you may want to mark your hoses. Somebody's been in here before and marked this as the upper, so we will remember that that's the upper with the tape on it. These vacuum hoses out of the way. Here we have a plug on this sensor, actually 2 plugs, and I'm not even certain that it matters what order you get them in on those, just as long as it completes the circuit. Then we want to take off our console radio bracket, if yours is so equipped. And we're going to find a bracket, L-shaped, right here into the cowl. And that looks like a 3/8. Now we have a 1/4 inch fitting there. Okay, before we go any further, we are going to guide this hose out. Now, it's not like I said before, somebody's already been here, so that drain cock is broken off. We'll have to deal with that. Reach behind there, guide that stud out. I'm going to remove this vacuum actuator because I don't want to scratch the kick panel. You would like to take it out without messing with the blower motor. Unfortunately, the blower motor is going to have to move over just a little bit or take it completely out to make access here. So I got the stud on the back side out. I can feel it. There's the blower motor moving around. One thing we skipped, because this is missing it, there's supposed to be a plenum right here that deflects the air out. And that right now is missing, so just do know that's what's supposed to go right here behind your console. So now I've moved my blower motor over as much as possible. Now keep in mind this is very fragile fiberglass. So let's concentrate on the word glass. Now you see I slopped some coolant in there. What I should have done is taken that hose and left it attached to one of the nipples on that heater core while it was still out there and just given it a good burst of air, and it would have forced that few ounces of coolant into my drain pan below. So now the customer's going to wonder why it smells like antifreeze in his car, but we got it mopped up relatively quick. Okay, the real reason I'm doing this heater core replacement actually on this particular unit isn't the heater core. Somebody, I do believe, has replaced this heater core, but for some unknown reason, something went wrong here. They never put the flapper door in here. So I need to service this box, get it going again, get the right parts in this vicinity. And here's the problem. There's supposed to be a seal here and they've broke it off. So they had a cowl leak here and it rusted, and they just broke off this ring. So I need to replace at least this half of the box. But as I look at it, this half of the box has its problems too. Got a bracket missing here. We got the drain cock broken. We just really need a reproduction box, because I kind of go by the feeling that 3 strikes and you're out. We got a crack here, here, here. here, missing bezel here, big crack there. I'm going to say this box is done, and it's time to get a reproduction coming ASAP. It needs to be taken apart, and remember, this is how your clips come off. See, if you put the screwdriver in like this, you can open them up. I'm going to show you, since this is a ruined box, I'm going to show you what happens when you pry. If you put your screwdriver here, look what I just did. I just broke the fiberglass, and now this clip has nothing to hold on to once I break this ridge off. So remember, these are designed to lift off like this. No, look, the previous person in here did not know this trick. So this clip was on the loose side. Okay, before we go any further, we're going to get the new box, because we're going to need to transfer some parts out of this, and we want to make sure everything is spot on. So we don't want to completely disassemble this till we get our new one in hand. Let's go get the new one. Okay, so immediately I see everything's protected well with these blocks, and let's compare it to the original, see what differences there are. So on this unit, we had a cowl leak here, so we're missing this ring, so I was never going to get a good seal up there. That makes it inefficient for bringing in fresh air, just squanders it through under the dash. Here's the door that I was missing. Now this unit already has the foam seal package. So I would say, let's return this and get our money back. But as of doing this video, and this will be changed soon, and we will update our website, they use 2 dents of foam on here. So unfortunately, the first thing we have to do on this unit is take out their high density firm foam. And luckily, it's only gently glued in. It isn't put in with anything permanent. Again, we will update the website once they correct this, but the foam I get from Daniel Carpenter is correct. This is supposed to collapse almost 100% and make a seal. So let's go ahead and glue that in so it's drying while we work on other things. And there's what the drain cock is supposed to look like when it's not broke off flush with the floor. So nice to see that. So since I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and change that valve out. I'm going to put the brand new one right in place, and it's going to go right here under these fasteners. Oftentimes the spring in these will be rusty or gummed up. So maybe the nipples aren't broke, or maybe it still directs vacuum the right way, but a fresh spring is a good thing. So I'm going to go ahead and replace this. I'm going to move this actuator over. Hopefully this U-shaped bracket lines up perfectly. The best way to test these is with a handheld Mighty Vac pump-up tester, but there's always the old-fashioned way. You just see if it holds vacuum. That's a good one. Now let's see. So here we go. We got a perfect fit here. Notice how that lines up fine. Then I take it over to the reproduction, and I notice we're a little off. But luckily, that's an adjustable rod. So let's see if we can adjust this enough to have it align properly. Here we go. We're close, but I don't like how I have to push the actuator in a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to massage this rod a little this way. So let's see if we can just bend this guy. I'm going to get a pair of pliers, give it a little more. Don't do too much or it'll break. Now, let's see if we have better alignment. I think that's reasonable. So we're going to fasten it up right like that. All right, I'm going to remove my evaporator. You might be tempted just to buy a brand new one because, well, you don't want to do this job again. I'm not crazy about the new ones. I have not had good luck with them. So let's carefully take out this old one, clean it up. And my AC was working the other day, so I know it holds pressure. If you are unsure about yours, you could always put it in a bucket of water and put 70, 80, 90 psi to it and see if you see any bubbles. And they can be repaired at a radiator shop if you do have an issue. And every bit of this creates blockage. So my goal is to get it 100% clean. I'm going to blow it out with compressed air. And then I'm even go so far to try to straighten out these fins with my screwdriver just so I get just that much better airflow through here. Won't take too much time. These grommets that seal these are always petrified. You couldn't get that off there if you wanted to. And actually I could slip it in there and probably do its job, but we got the brand new ones available and we will go ahead and put that in there. Okay, let's open up the box and start loading it. Now these new clips don't come off as easy as the old ones. You might have to finagle them just a little bit. And also do know that the new system, this is ABS plastic, so it isn't as brittle. So notice I can actually get under there and pop those off, and I'm getting no damage because this is new. And most importantly, it's ABS plastic. So notice these fasteners are much larger than the originals. I got to do one of two things. I either have to enlarge the holes on the evaporator or reuse the fasteners for my whole setup. See, the old fasteners didn't even use nuts, they threaded right into here. So I'm going to put this right into here. And notice I did choose to leave my old seals here. I'm going to go ahead and replace this seal because it is chewed up.
So you kind of do need to buy the kit.
Yep, you do. Now it fits snuggerish. These holes, I notice, aren't exactly aligned. Notice how this screw is going in at an angle like this. I'm not going to get too concerned about that as long as the evaporator is firmly held in place. Oh. But I'm not going to get too excited about that as long as everything, like this bracket, is firmly in place. And this last screw, the alignment's way off. Again, it's not going to make a difference. This can't go anywhere. I'm going to leave that screw out. Notice the design here is straight on this, and we got a step down here. Do know that both are correct. It was just a model run change, so this is going to fit fine in place even though it looks a little different here. I'm going to leave this as a template here. I'm going to tear apart this, but I'm going to leave this together as a template. So as I'm putting the brand new heater core in here, if I get confused, I can look back at this one. Oh, I shouldn't have put that valve on there. Yep, that valve holds this in. Gonna have to remove this. Okay, maybe this stays in place and this comes out. Notice on the original, my socket fits fine on here. I got enough access to take that out. But notice on the reproduction, my thick walled socket, no go. So just know that you're gonna have to get in there with your box end wrench, give it a couple turns, and then maybe your socket will fit. What I'm doing here, first I took this out, but it would have been easier to take this out first. Unfortunately, they crimp it so tight at the factory, you have to undo the crimp a little bit to get this shaft out. Okay, now we can put the heater core in. I'm going to finish opening up this box here. Part of it, which reason, is I want to save some parts, like this little guy here. It looks pretty rusty. It might not be salvageable, but if it is, I can trade it into West Coast Classic Cougar for in-store credit, because those are often rotted. Let's break into this box and see how our seals go on the original heater core. Okay, even though this heater core, as I mentioned, was good, I'm not going to risk it. It's too much labor to save a couple dollars. I do notice that these caps might be reusable. I got the original Ford part number on them there, but I'm not going to bother. I'm going to put new caps on it. And the foam on the sides is deteriorating, so let's replace that foam. I do notice that my new replacement foam looks a little oversized for some reason. So we might have to trim that down just a little bit so as to match what's going on there. So I'm going to get my scissors. I'm going to take off about 1/4 inch here. Okay, so let's get the new heater core in here. Okay, so we're going to have to put these two seals on either side of this, but they're going to need a little bit of trimming. Here we go. And we're going to slide this down till it barely brushes the bottom. And on this one, we're going to put a little notch right in the middle. Now you don't want to crowd this one especially too close, because it does have to open and close. So test your opening and closing ability before you let it set up. Okay, this new foam end caps on here aren't compressed, so Expect a little bit of a struggle to get them in there, but you actually want a tight fit. So we're going to have to slide these in here without folding over the rubber. Make sure you get this pushed all the way down. And the better placement for this rubber, I do believe, would have been just a little bit further down. See, I got that gap there. It'd be good to close this off right here. So let's do a reglue and see if we can't get it closer down to that metal. Yep, screw holes line up. So it was kind of frustrating that this came all assembled with no heater core, and now I had to unassemble it and uncrimp things to get it apart to get the heater core. And now I'm putting it back in, no big deal. We can remember how it went, you know, let's just make sure everything gets put back in place. But I uncrimped this so I could get this silly rod out. Now this is moving. And if it happens to move over this way, it'll catch one of these rivets. So we got to figure out how to tightly get this thing back in place so it doesn't shift over here and get stuck. That'll be annoying. There we go. Okay, I'm running into a little frustration here. This door with the foam seals on both sides has to close completely. You'll be fighting your air conditioning against your heat, against your fresh air, unless we got a good seal here. So this little actuator is supposed to go right here, but how are we going to get that to work? So the only thing I can think of is this point is to bend that arm. So first, let's put things together and see how that plays out. So hopefully I'm going to be able to bend this back without hurting anything and still have it line up on the plunger. So here we go. It's pretty soft metal. Still not enough. Okay, so that was a minor adjustment. But if you don't know how this is supposed to work, you might miss that and never have very efficient AC. So when this is all the way down, the plunger should be down like that. Now notice there's ridges here, so your goal is to line those up and have them fit tightly in there, just like that. And these might look like the originals to you, but they're really quite a different design. I would not try to mix and match. So keep these originals, don't throw them away. They're actually kind of hard to come by. I'm test fitting this now to make sure that everything lines up. This is the one I took off for clearance, potential clearance reasons. All right, so it looked kind of easy getting out. Getting in is the tricky part. because all these ports have to align, and this stud has to align with the hole, and everything has to just fit up there just right. We're going to take our time. Also remember, this is a delicate piece and has to end up hooking to this drain hose. So let's poke this drain hose out of the way, but not all the way through. Let's get our carpet down a touch. Okay, in it goes. Do you hear the stud now? Isn't it in the corner? Okay. Okay, this is the part where it's kind of nice to have a friend. So I feel the stud through the firewall. I can actually hear the threads, rubbing on the hole. But now there's this bracket that attaches to my elbow bracket here that I need to get started. But I got my hand here, so you got two choices. You get somebody's help, or you figure out how to get a block of wood that goes from here to here to hold it. And since Andrew is holding the camera, I'm going to go get a block of wood. Okay, my goal is to make this 90-degree elbow bracket fit up to there. So, without having an extra helper here, keeping my stud in place in the firewall, I've got an 11-inch chunk of wood that's going to free up my hand so I can put the clip back up onto the bracket right here. And somebody's been in here with some poor 15, I can tell, which is indicative of a cowl leak at one time. Okay, notice how we're starting to see this foam seal collapse against the cowl. That's what we want to see. Doesn't need to go any further. You're not accomplishing anything by running that bolt all the way up. So just until that foam seal starts to collapse. Now, let's make sure we have a snug fit right here on this drain cock. There can't be any kinks in it. Can't be any obstructions in the hose. Make sure bees didn't find her, some other bug didn't find their way into that orifice. Now this is not a factory hose, but it's going to let the moisture drops out because it's not kinked there. It's important that you don't have kinks there. We do have these hoses on our website if you want the factory one with the right curvature in it. So get it up snug. And from the factory, they had a clamp on them. So we're going to go find ourselves, even though it seemed to stay in place last time, we're going to go get a clamp and put it on there just to be safe. Okay, this is kind of a tricky part because now you have to mate the blower motor back up into the heater box. That's why it's important to change out the seal. Of course, by the time you watch this video, maybe they'll have got the correct seal in the kit. But anyway, I have to pull this up and push this motor housing into this flange and then get the stud through the firewall. And of course you can't feel the stud or see the stud. I mean, maybe you got somebody on the firewall on the other side that's directing you, but you'll hear it. You'll hear a drrrt when the threads hit the firewall. So I'm just gonna keep massaging this, pushing it that way until I can feel the stud go in the hole. There we go. Did you hear that? Okay, and I'm going to give you some tips for alignment. You see the AC center line hole here? It'll line up with the, when you're standing right here, the AC seam for the blower motor here. Maybe not exact, but pretty much. And also notice when I take my finger or a straight edge, see there's a flat spot here on the dash. When I go like that, that's about where it ends. So as you're hunting for where the stud goes, this should give you some reference. Okay, let's put this cable on first. So you see this bulge here? This is a stop, and it's going to rest right against this 90-degree elbow. And we're going to put our keeper in here like this. And we can't get this clamp too tight, this keeper, or you will crush the cable and it will no longer move. So you just want this snug. Here's a little tip. Here's the original clip. Here's the reproduction clip. And not a bad reproduction. The screw they give you is completely worthless. It's not long enough. Okay, and before you button things up, let's test this. Make sure the cable moves freely. And when this lever goes all the way in, this plunger should be there. Just like that. Now, even though you may not have purposely disconnected this AC duct, all that jostling around could have undone it. So let's unlock the tabs and put this back up on the elbow as it's supposed to be and lock it down. I want to point something out. This little clip used to have an extension onto it with a hole, and I do believe it used to mount right under that bolt up there. So there's a couple things you could do. You could try to put another hole in here and put it down, or you go to our website and buy another replacement. What I've done for now, until I get my clip back in place, I just put my hose right behind this probe. And that should keep it out of the way of the glove box for now. We got this actuator here, and it'd be real easy to forget to hook up the rod. So we almost can't see it. We're gonna put the rod on, and we got the little keeper here. And we're gonna reach up there and slide that keeper on the shaft end. Spin it as you push it. We should be good to go. There you go. I actually didn't plan on changing these heater hoses because they still felt rather pliable and probably aren't that old, but they end up cementing themselves to the heater core. So it's easier just to cut these off, buy new ones, and it's cheap insurance that could save you a lot of headaches someday. So let's just put some new heater hoses on. Okay, pretty explanatory, self-explanatory. We're just going to go in reverse of what we did earlier. This is the original. I'm going to choose to use it, but do know that a lot of times they're just so brittle. This one's starting to crack a little bit, but as long as you can flex it around those hoses, you can still use it. There's the original part number. And we do have some decent used ones. Our reproductions aren't the best, but nobody sees it, and it works as a heat barrier, and it fits in the spot, so we weren't going to get too excited which way we have to go on those. So I'm feeding it over this port first, then we'll reach over, feed it over this port, and lastly, it goes over the heater core ports, one at a time. Although you could go either way, this is designed, because of that little step, for this piece to go on first and this on top of it. Get it under there, then over the ports there. Oh, we got to put the thingamajog in there. Notice these two spacers, keepers, washers, whatever you want to call them, have a flange. The flange goes inward towards the tube and flares out, or up if you want to say that. I don't usually reuse this inexpensive insulative material, but we found ourselves out of stock. This works just as good as the original material. Who knows, maybe better, but we do have the original stuff on our website, and it gives an authentic look. So for today, this is what we're going to have to do. Okay, this is a correct type hose. What I like about it is it's got these bends in there. You can make non-bent heater hoses fit in there, but it just doesn't look as tight and right. Do know they're not cut to length. You'll get more than you need, and they will be too long in this area. You'll have to hold it up to your hose and see what length needs to be trimmed off of it. And just for fun, we put the correct type clamps on it. Now you'd think when you buy a heater hose kit that it would include the third hose. Not so. It doesn't include this hose here either, this little elbow hose you see there. So do know that when you buy our correct red striped hoses, you got to buy this one as well. Now be careful, if you over tighten these clamps, they'll come apart on you. Your goal is to get them tight enough that they can't rotate on the fitting. Now, as you noticed earlier when we took apart this, it's missing this diverter. It'll still work without it, but since we can get the parts, why not? This is a used one, and unfortunately most of our used ones are grade B and are missing things like that. If you have any grade A ones, we'd buy them from you. Anyway, they require these 3 fasteners. And of course, you don't have to use these original push pin fasteners. You can use any old plastic modern fastener to push in there. We have those as well. So let's show you how this goes in. Now here's what most people miss. There's a bracket back here and they can't see it. So this bracket has to align with this hole, and we need 3 fasteners to do it. That one in. I just couldn't put the original console back in after that many breaks. It could have been super glued and plastic welded and reinforced from the back and repainted, but I put another one in. It was green, I didn't have a blue, but I just wanted to show our match from our SEM blue, shadow blue paint and the original. It's pretty close. It's hard to tell because after 50 years plastic does turn colors, but if you look at the inside, you might get a little better idea. So it's not exact, but I think it's pretty close. It's important when you put these consoles in that the wiring loom is attached to the proper places, because if it moves around, it can end up right here and get severed. Now, here's something that often people forget. On the bottom, now this is a spacer, just keeps the bezel off the carpet. But here, this goes in the hole as an alignment feature. Now, I forgot to mention, if your shifter is in the least bit loose, this is the time you replace your bushings down below. 2 little inexpensive bushings, and all you have to do is remove the shifter arm with 1 9/16 nut, replace them, put a little white lithium grease, and you're good for another 50 years. Onto that spade. Okay, this console before had the wrong hardware. I'm going to put the correct hardware on there, although really you don't have to. Simple washers will work. We got 3 of these little plates, and they go in these 3 spots. In the 4th position, just takes a screw without a plate. And notice this ridge right here on the plastic is behind this indentation. Also notice that the console is up relatively tight to the dash, but depending on what carpet you have, that may differ. Now, lest you think I never make mistakes, I just attempted to install the console without the radio, and whereas I could take this piece out, I'm just gonna flip the console back out and make sure the radio is in place. You can reach behind and undo these studs and bring it out, but it's just as easy to do it this way. Big one, little one. There it goes. The nut going back on the stud. It's important you use the correct screws that are tapered here. In 67 they were chrome headed like this one. In 68 they were a natural finish, but a lot of people like the chrome finish and it holds up nice too. So the key is on these to make sure your console is exactly lined up and the carpet does not snag the screw on the way in. And when I tighten them, I like to just barely get them snug. Don't tighten brittle old 50-year-old plastic. See the looseness there? That is just fine. It's so easy to get out of sequence. So remember, this has to go on prior to the face pad. Reason being is the screw holes are under the console face pad assembly. We have the rebuilt clocks in stock, ready to go. The spring clips are the same common spring clips you see holding the seat backs on, the door panels, and all throughout the car. Do notice that they go downward in all 4 positions. Now notice I'm keeping this gap right here. That's because I have 3 things to line up. We have this hole here, we have the radio bracket, and then we have a clip behind. And it can be hard to line all those up without getting a visual. So we're going to line up this screw and wiggle it around. Everything pops in place. There we go, all popped in place. Now I can take my fingers and slide this up where it belongs. These console knobs are specific to the 68 consoles. They can be used on 67s. But do notice we have a spacer here. If you have an AM/FM or a rear speaker fader assembly or an AM 8-track, you don't need this little spacer here. But do know that your knob will just wobble all over the place if you don't have this in place on a simple AM radio. This really isn't as scary of a job as maybe you've been led to believe. It does take more hours than it should if you're like me and you're constantly getting out of sequence. You get that console partway in, you realize, oh no, I should have put the radio in first. So if you did a ton of them, you'd be perfect at it. I'm hoping this video actually helps you save some time, gain some confidence. And I wish I could tell you exactly what to buy going into it, but as you saw with myself, I didn't know I was buying another plenum. I didn't know I was going searching for a console base. Unfortunately, a heater core replacement can turn into a $1,500 project, but at least you save the labor and you have the satisfaction of doing it yourself, and most shops just don't have the time to give the love like you're going to give your car. So thanks for watching. I hope this helped, and do respond in the comments if you've got some tips to add or some criticism. Other people have done this many more times than I will be in the comments giving their tips, so check it out.